A knock in the rain. The wind was strong that night. Rain hit the windows like little stones. Jack sat alone in his small farmhouse, a hot mug in his hands and the fire crackling nearby. He lived far from the city, surrounded by old trees and muddy roads. It was quiet until he heard the knock. It was soft at first. Just one knock. Jack turned his head toward the door, unsure if it was real or just the wind playing games. Then it came again. Knock, knock. He stood up, a bit careful. It was late. Too late for visitors. He looked out the side window but saw nothing except darkness. And Rain. With one hand on the doorknob, he slowly opened it. There she was, a small figure, standing in the rain. She looked no older than 7 or 8. Her skin was pale blue, almost glowing in the dark. Her eyes, big and round, were full of fear. Her clothes were torn and wet. Mud stuck to her bare feet. She was shivering. Jack blinked, not sure what he was seeing. Was it ... an alien child? The girl didn't say a word. She just looked up at him with wide, empty eyes. Her arms hugged her thin body tightly. Hey ... Jack said softly, unsure what else to say, you okay? She didn't answer. He looked around. No one was with her. No ship, no lights, no adult, nothing. You're alone? He asked. Still no answer. Just quiet shivers. He stepped aside. You can come in if you want. It's warm inside. She looked at his eyes for a second, then stepped inside slowly like a ghost. She didn't touch anything. Just stood near the wall, dripping water onto the floor. Jack walked to the kitchen and brought back a towel. He handed it to her. She stared at it, then slowly took it in her little hands and dried her arms and face. Hungry? He asked. She nodded once. Silent, but clear. Jack warmed up some leftover stew and placed it in front of her on the table. She walked over and sat slowly, still cautious. Then she picked up the spoon and began to eat fast, like she hadn't eaten in days. Her hands shook, her lips moved quickly. Jack watched in silence. Who was she? Where did she come from? Why was she out there alone in the storm? She finished the bowl and looked up at him. Her lips parted for a moment, like she might say something. But then she looked down again. It's okay, Jack said gently. You don't have to talk. Just rest. He brought a blanket and led her to the couch by the fire. She sat and wrapped herself tightly. The warmth seemed to calm her. Jack went to grab some dry clothes from the storage room, some old shirts and soft pants. When he came back, the couch was empty. She was gone. He looked around the house quickly. No sign of her. The front door was slightly open. Rain still poured outside. She had vanished. Jack stood there for a long minute, holding the dry clothes in his hands, unsure what just happened. Did she run? Was she scared? Was she real? He stepped outside with a flashlight and searched around the porch and garden. Nothing. Only the sound of the wind and water. Back inside, the bowl she used was still on the table, empty and clean. And the chair she sat on was wet. So she was real. Jack sighed and locked the door. Something about that little girl didn't feel normal. But it also didn't feel dangerous. There was sadness in her. Deep sadness. And hunger. She was alone. He looked at the blanket still warm on the couch and whispered to himself, Where did you go, little one? He didn't know it yet, but that night was only the beginning. The next time he saw her, she wouldn't be alone. And his quiet life? It would never be the same again. The next morning, Jack kept checking the road in front of his farmhouse. He looked out the window again and again, hoping to see the little girl. But the road stayed empty, and the forest was quiet. No sign of her, no sound. Only the soft wind moving through the trees. He hadn't dreamed her. He was sure of that now. He still remembered her small hands shaking as she ate, the wet footprints on his wooden floor, the way she vanished without a word. Jack cleaned up the bowl she had used and placed it near the window, just in case she came back. But days passed. Nothing. Each evening, Jack left a little food near his porch, just one meal and some clean water. And every morning it was still there, untouched, until the fourth day. That morning, Jack opened his door as usual. The food was gone, but this time, something was left behind. It was the same bowl he had given her, clean, dry, carefully placed on the porch step. But it wasn't alone. Beside it, there was a tiny blue flower like crystal, glowing faintly in the morning light. Alien. Jack had never seen any plant like that in his life. He picked it up gently, puzzled. "Are you watching me?" he said, quietly, looking at the tree line. "Or are you in trouble?" He didn't know why, but a strange feeling filled his chest. The girl wasn't just hiding. She was trying to say something. Maybe she couldn't speak his language. Maybe she was scared, but she had taken the food, and she had said thank you. In her own small way, Jack placed the glowing flower inside a glass jar and set it near the window. That evening, he cooked a fresh meal, hot soup, bread, and some fruit. He put the same bowl outside, right in the center of the porch, and waited. But instead of going to bed, he stayed awake, sitting in the dark behind the curtain, watching. Hours passed. Rain began to fall lightly again. The wind picked up. Then movement. He saw it. A small shadow crept from the trees. Slow and careful. It was her. She looked just the same, small, quiet, and alone. Her head turned left and right, like she was making sure no one was watching. Jack didn't move. The girl stepped onto the porch. She knelt beside the bowl and sniffed the food before taking it into her hands. But this time, she didn't run. She sat right there on the step and began to eat. Jack could see her better now. Her skin had healed a little. Less dirt, but she was. Still thin, still silent. After a while, she paused. Then she took out something from her small cloth satchel, a small flat piece of metal, like a charm. She placed it beside the bowl. Jack S. Quinted. It was an old ID tag. Alien language was printed on it, plus a number, and ... A picture, faded but clear. It was her, the same girl, with someone else in the photo. A taller alien woman, likely her mother. Jack stepped out slowly. He didn't want to scare her. The girl looked up in shock but didn't run this time. "It's okay," Jack said, softly. "I won't hurt you." She watched him with wide eyes but stayed still. Jack bent down and looked at the photo on the ID tag. "Is this your mom?" The girl blinked. Slowly, she gave one small nod. Jack's heart sank. She wasn't just hungry. She was lost. Or hiding. And her mother was missing. He looked at her again. "Where is she now?" The girl looked away. Tears slid down her cheek. Jack didn't press. He just sat beside her, careful not to make sudden movements. The rain grew stronger. He looked at the forest again. Darkness and trees, nothing else. But the air felt different, heavy. "Are you in danger?" he asked, almost in a whisper. This time she didn't respond, but she didn't need to. The way she hugged herself, the way her eyes darted at every sound in the trees, it told Jack everything. Someone or something was out there looking for her, and maybe her mother too. After she finished eating, the girl stood up. She didn't run. She just looked at Jack, then at the house. Then she pointed once at the glowing jar on the window. "You left that flower, didn't you?" Jack asked. She gave a tiny nod again. Then without a word, she stepped into the night and disappeared into the rain and trees once more. Jack stood there for a long time, the wind brushing past him. This wasn't a normal lost child. This was bigger. And tomorrow, he decided he wouldn't just wait for her to return. He would go looking. The fog rolled in early that morning, thick and cold like a gray blanket over the forest. Jack stood at the edge of his porch, flashlight in hand, eyes scanning the trees. The sky above was still dark, and the world looked half asleep. But Jack wasn't sleepy. He had made up his mind. He was going to find her. He grabbed a satchel, packed water, some food, a blanket, and the glowing flower she left days ago. He didn't know where she came from, but he knew one thing: she didn't belong out there alone. And she wasn't alone the last time she visited. That ID tag showed her mother. Somewhere out there, she might still be alive, the trail behind. His house led into thick woods. Normally Jack only went in for hunting or gathering mushrooms. Today was different. The deeper he walked, the more the trees closed in around him. Strange clicking noises came from far-away alien insects, maybe. Once or twice, he thought he saw something move between the trees. But when he turned his flashlight, nothing was there. He kept going. The fog grew thicker. Then he found it. A small, half-broken shuttle. Crashed long ago, maybe weeks earlier. Moss had begun to grow on the edges. Jack approached carefully. The metal looked alien, not from Earth. Burn marks ran down the sides. One engine was completely gone. He stepped inside. It was dark and smelled of burned wires. He found two things. One, a small blanket, the same kind the girl had wrapped around herself. Two, bloodstains dark purple. Alien blood. Jack knelt beside. The stains. You were here, he whispered. And someone was hurt. He heard a sound behind him. A branch broke. He turned quickly. Nothing. Then, from the corner of his eye, movement. Two shapes. He didn't move, didn't speak. Just watched. From behind the trees, the small girl stepped out. She looked tired, thinner than before. Her eyes locked on Jack, and she froze. But this time, she wasn't alone. Behind her, leaning against a tree, was a taller figure, shaking, weak, with deep cuts across her arms and neck. Her eyes were half closed. Her hair was matted with leaves and dirt. It was the same woman from the ID tag. The mother. Jack dropped his satchel and slowly held up both hands. "It's okay," he said, his voice calm. "I came to help." The girl looked back at her mother, then at Jack. Slowly, she walked toward him, took his hand, and pulled him toward the tree. Her mother fell to her knees. Jack dropped beside her and checked her pulse. It was weak. Her breathing was slow. "She's dying," Jack whispered. The little girl made a low noise. A soft whimper. Jack looked into her eyes. "We have to take her back. My house, it's warm, safe, please." The girl didn't answer. But she didn't pull away either. Together, Jack lifted the woman in his arms. She was heavier than she looked, her body limp and cold. The girl walked beside him the entire way back, her hand gripping his coat. By the time they reached the farmhouse, the fog had started to fade. But something strange hung in the air, like they were being watched. Jack could feel it. The girl kept looking over her shoulder. Inside the house, he placed the mother on the couch, covered her in warm blankets, and started a fire. He checked. Her wounds, some looked like blade cuts. Others were strange, circular marks that almost looked surgical. Who did this to her? He asked softly, not really expecting an answer. The girl sat close, rubbing her mother's hand, her lips moving in silent words, her language. Maybe prayers. Jack brought over hot broth and tried to get the woman to drink. A little went in. She coughed but swallowed. She was alive. He turned to the girl. "You did good. You kept her safe." The girl looked at him. Then, for the first time, she spoke. Just one word. "Safe." Jack blinked. You understand me?" She nodded. Slowly. "Safe," she said again, and pointed at him. Jack smiled. "Yes, safe." The girl reached into her satchel and pulled out a small broken piece of metal, a part of her ship maybe. She handed it to Jack. Carved on the side was a symbol. He didn't recognize it, but the look in her eyes said it mattered. Jack placed the piece on the table. "We'll figure this out," he said. "I promise." Outside, the fog was lifting. But far away, in the woods, something beeped. A red light blinked once on a black device buried near the crashed shuttle. A tracker. Someone or something knew they were here, and it was coming. Asterisk. The storm returned that night, thunder rolling across the sky like distant drums. Inside the farmhouse, the little alien girl sat silently beside her mother, who was still too weak to speak. Jack moved carefully, checking her wounds again. He had seen injuries before, but not like these. Her skin was pale gray, almost silver. Under the warm lamplight, long lines ran across her arms and legs, thin, even cuts that looked too perfect to be random. Like someone had studied her, like someone had tested her. Jack's hands paused. His gut tightened. This wasn't just a crash. She had been captured. The girl watched him closely as he used a warm cloth to clean the wounds. Every time her mother groaned in pain, the child flinched, as if she could feel it too. "You've been through hell," Jack whispered, "but you're safe now." He reached for his old med kit and used what he could: antiseptic, bandages, drops to stop infection. Some medicines reacted strangely with her skin. A few drops sizzled and left white marks. Jack stopped immediately. "Your biology's different," he said, thinking out loud. "I'll have to be careful." He looked over to the girl. "She needs rest, food time." The girl nodded, her little hands wrapping around her mother's. As if remembering something, she reached into her satchel again and pulled out a small round object. She touched it gently, and it began to glow faint blue. A soft humming sound filled the room. Jack stepped closer. "What is that?" She placed it over her mother's chest. It hovered. Lights blinked, and a strange energy moved across the woman's body like waves. The girl stared at Jack. "Help," she said, then pointed at the wall socket. Jack understood. She needed power. He quickly grabbed some wire and connected the object using the converter. The humming grew louder. The alien woman's breathing deepened. Her hands twitched. The girl looked up at Jack. "You help," she said slowly. Her voice was unsure, but strong enough to carry meaning. Jack smiled gently. "You're doing most of the work, kid." Suddenly, the girl stood and walked toward the fireplace. She sat down, pulled the blanket over her knees, and finally let out a long, tired breath. It was the first time Jack saw her look like a child. He brought over soup and placed it near her. She hesitated at first, but then began to eat, slowly, carefully. She wasn't starving now. She was watching Jack, learning to trust him more. When she finished, she picked up a piece of paper from the side table and grabbed a pencil. Jack watched. Curious, she began to draw. At first, it looked like random lines. But as she worked, shapes formed clear and sharp. A ship, a cage, two smaller figures. Then tall, dark ones with glowing eyes. Jack leaned in, heart sinking. "Those are the ones who hurt you, aren't they?" The girl stopped drawing. Her hands clenched. Then she nodded once and tapped the page twice on the tall, dark shape. Jack folded the paper gently and placed it in a drawer. "I won't let them find you again." He meant it, but outside, trouble was already near. Hours later, the mother stirred. Jack had fallen asleep in the chair beside the couch. The girl was wrapped in the blanket by the fire. The humming from the alien device had grown quiet. Then, a weak voice spoke. "Where are we?" Jack opened his eyes. The alien woman was awake. Her eyes were sharp, glowing slightly in the dark. "Room, you're safe," Jack said, sitting up fast. "You're in my home." She turned her head slowly. Her body still shook, but her mind was clear. "My daughter?" Jack pointed to the girl by the fire. "She's all right. She brought you here." The woman's face softened. "She found someone kind." Jack chuckled a little. "I'm just a farmer." "No," she said firmly. "You're human." Jack didn't know what she meant by that. She coughed and tried to sit up, but her body collapsed. "You shouldn't move," he said quickly. She looked at him again. "They'll come. The ones who hunt. Then we'll be ready." She studied him for a long second, then asked, "Why are you helping us?" Jack looked at her daughter, still asleep near the fire. "Because no child should suffer like that. Not on my land. Not on my world." The alien woman's eyes filled with something close to gratitude. Then, from outside there was a soft, sharp beep. Jack stood fast. He looked through the window. A red light blinked once in the dark. Then again. Then another. Closer. The woman's breath caught. "They found us." Jack stood frozen by the window, eyes locked on the red blinking light hidden deep in the trees. It pulsed like a heartbeat, steady, slow, but moving closer. He didn't need to be a soldier to understand what it meant. They had been found. He turned away from the window and looked at the alien woman lying weak on his couch. Her eyes were open now, sharp and alert, glowing faintly under the lamplight. No more confusion. No more fear. Just calm understanding. "They tracked us," she said. Her voice was dry but clear. "The signal was buried in the shuttle," Jack nodded. "You were right. Someone's coming." He quickly moved to the girl, still sleeping near the fire. Gently he touched her shoulder. "Wake up, little one," he said softly. Her eyes opened at once. No surprise in them, just worry. Like she already knew this moment would come. Jack helped her stand, then crouched beside her. "Listen, I need you to stay inside. Don't open the door unless it's me. Understand?" She gave a tiny nod. Jack turned to the mother. "Can you move?" She tried. Her hands pushed against the armrest. Her arms shook. Jack rushed forward and caught her before she fell. "I can help you get to the back room," he said. "No," she whispered. "You must hide my daughter." Jack didn't argue. He knew time was short. He grabbed a large blanket and wrapped it around the girl, then led her to the small storage room behind the kitchen. It had no window, but it was dry, quiet, and hidden. "You'll be safe here," he told her, before closing the door. She reached out and took his hand. "Don't go," she whispered in her soft voice. Jack smiled gently. "I'll come back. I promise." Then he closed the door. Back in the living room, the alien woman sat up slowly, holding herself upright with great effort. Jack handed her a mug of water. "What are they?" he asked. She took a breath. "Hunters. Not just any kind, corporate. From the black markets." Jack's jaw tightened. "You were being sold?" She nodded. "I escaped, but not before they tested us." Jack looked away. He had seen enough suffering in his life, but something about this hit deeper. Maybe it was the girl's silence, or the way she looked at him like he was the first person who didn't treat her like property. "I was a researcher once," the woman said quietly, "but after the war, my world fell. I ran. Took my daughter. We've been running ever since." Jack stood up and walked to the door. He grabbed his old rifle from the corner. He hadn't used it in years. The barrel was dusty, but it still worked. "If they come here looking for a fight," he said, loading the rifle, "I'll give them one." The woman gave him a look, half respect, half worry. "You're just one man." Jack looked at her. "I'm enough." Outside, the sound of engines broke the night. A small black craft landed quietly in the clearing. Sleek, fast, the kind made for capture and escape. 2 figures stepped out. Tall, armored, their faces hidden behind metal masks. They carried long staffs, electric weapons designed to disable, not kill. They moved like predators. Jack stepped out onto the porch, gun in hand. "Evenin'," he called out. The hunters paused. One of them pointed the staff toward him. "You have something that belongs to us," a robotic voice replied. Jack cocked the rifle. "I don't think people belong to anyone." There was a silence. Then the second hunter moved. Fast. Jack fired once. The shot hit the ground, beside the hunter's boot on purpose. "Next one won't miss," he warned. But they weren't scared. Not even close. One raised a wrist device. A red dot appeared on Jack's chest. Inside the house, the little girl heard everything. Her tiny fingers wrapped tightly around the glowing flower she had left days ago. Its light pulsed stronger now, as if responding to her heartbeat. She stood up. Back in the living room, the woman forced herself off the couch. She fell once, but then she stood again. "I won't let them take her," she said to herself. Outside, the standoff grew tense. Then the door behind Jack opened slowly. The girl stood there, face firm, shoulders back. "No!" Jack shouted. "Get back inside." But she didn't move. She walked past him, tiny feet stepping into the mud. Her eyes stared directly at the hunters. One of them raised their weapon. That's when her mother screamed from inside the house. It wasn't just fear, it was something else. A pulse of light shot from the glowing device still hooked to her chest. And suddenly, the girl glowed. Her body lit up with strange energy. Her eyes turned white-blue. The staff in the hunter's hand sparked and exploded. Both hunters stumbled back. Jack looked at her. Stunned. The girl wasn't just surviving. She was activating. The night sky lit up like lightning, but no thunder. Followed. The energy that burst from the little alien girl wasn't natural. It was powerful, glowing from her body like she had become a star. Her hair floated as if she stood underwater, and her small hands pulsed with blue-white light. Jack stood frozen. He had never seen anything like this. The two hunters staggered backward, shielding their faces as their weapons overloaded and exploded. Sparks flew. One dropped to a knee, armor smoking. The other tried to stand, shaking, but his mask cracked. Under the pressure of the energy field, the little girl didn't move. She simply looked at them. And they stopped, not because they wanted to, because something held them still. The glowing light around her hummed, steady and strange like music made from air and metal. Then it vanished. Just like that, it disappeared. And she collapsed into the mud. Jack ran to her. He scooped her into his arms. She was breathing but weak, eyes shut tight. Her skin had cooled, but her hands still glowed faintly. "What did you just do?" he whispered. Behind them, one of the hunters growled and began to rise. Jack turned quickly. He placed the girl on the porch and grabbed his rifle again. The hunter raised his broken staff, but before he could strike, a high-pitched alien scream rang through the trees. It came from the house, from her mother. The door slammed open, and the alien woman stood there, fully awake, her body trembling with effort. She was holding something long and sharp, a hidden blade Jack hadn't seen before. "You will not take her," she cried, voice echoing like thunder. The hunter tried to lunge, but the woman moved faster than Jack thought possible. Her blade slashed through the air with precision. The hunter stumbled back, weapon falling to the ground. The second hunter, still recovering, called for retreat in a distorted voice. A flash came from their ship, a signal. A blue beam shot from above, surrounding the two hunters. And then, in an instant, they vanished, beamed away, like ghosts. Silence fell over the clearing. Only the wind moved now. Jack looked at the alien woman. Her chest rose and fell fast. Blood dripped from her hand, but her eyes were calm, fierce. Then her knees gave out. Jack caught her before she hit the ground. He carried both of them back inside, the girl first, then the mother, and placed them gently near the fire. They were safe. For now. Hours passed. The storm faded. The sky turned from black to gray. A quiet dawn arrived. Jack sat on the floor, back against the wall, rifle beside him. He hadn't slept. His eyes kept watching the door, just in case more hunters came. But none did. The mother opened her eyes. Again around sunrise. Her voice was softer this time. "She saved us," Jack nodded. "What did she do?" The woman looked at the glowing flower on the table. "She awakened her inheritance." Jack frowned. "What does that mean?" "She's not just a child," the mother whispered. "She's designed. I created her during the war genetically. She's a mix of 3 species. One of them is human." Jack stared. You mixed human DNA? She nodded. Your people. You survive better than any other. I needed that strength. For her. Jack looked at the girl. She was still asleep, her face peaceful now. No fear, no shaking. She's stronger than me, the woman said. But she's still a child. She didn't know she had that power. Not until tonight. Jack leaned forward. Will she be okay? She will, the mother answered. If we protect her. He nodded. There was something in him now, a decision. He had started this as a stranger, just helping a lost child. But that was no longer true. They weren't strangers anymore. They were his family now. He stood up and stretched his arms. We need to leave soon. They know where we are, the woman agreed. They'll return, with more. Jack walked to the back room, opened the small chest he hadn't touched in years. Inside was a small bag of old Earth tech tools, maps, batteries, and a holographic compass. His old survival gear. He returned to the room and dropped it on the table. We'll head north. There are caves, remote and safe. The woman sat up. Her strength was slowly coming back. I can walk again. Not fast, but enough. Jack looked at the girl. What about her? She'll wake soon. As if on cue, the girl stirred. Her eyes opened. The light was gone from them, but her spirit had changed. She sat up and looked at Jack. Then she smiled, a real smile. Jack smiled back. No more hiding, he said gently. We're together now. The girl reached out and touched his hand. This time, it was not of fear. It was trust. And for the first time in her young life. She felt like she belonged. The morning sun broke gently over the hills as Jack packed the last of the supplies. A cold wind blew across the field, but inside the small farmhouse, warmth still lingered from the night's fire. It had been the longest night of Jack's life, and maybe the most important. The girl was awake now, quiet but calm, sitting at the table and watching Jack as he moved around the room. Her large eyes followed his every step, like she was memorizing it all, like she didn't want to forget even a second of peace. Her mother sat beside her, still wrapped in blankets, but no longer weak. Her body was healing slowly. The strange cuts on her arms were fading, leaving thin silver line scars of survival. Jack poured warm tea into 3 cups. He placed one in front of each of them. The girl sniffed it, then looked at her mother for approval. A small nod. She took a sip and smiled. It was the first time she smiled twice. Jack smiled too. You both look better. The alien woman gave a slow nod. Your home gave us something we forgot long ago. What's that? Hope. Jack looked around. The old house wasn't much. The walls were worn, the floor creaked, and the roof needed fixing. But he realized now this wasn't just his house anymore. It was theirs too. I was thinking, he said, placing his cup down. We don't have to run. The woman raised an eyebrow. You saw what they're capable of. I did, Jack replied. And I saw what she's capable of too. He looked at the girl, who was now drawing something on the corner of the table using a piece of charcoal. She's not just a survivor, she's a fighter. The girl held up her picture. It showed 3 figures, Jack, her mother, and herself, all holding hands. Standing in front of the house, Jack's heart tightened. She's already calling this home. The woman took a breath. But it's dangerous. So is running. There was silence. Then Jack stood up. I've got a plan. By afternoon, the house looked different. Jack reinforced the walls with metal panels he once stored in the barn. He sealed the windows with emergency glass and hooked up an old security sensor network he hadn't used since the solar storms 5 years ago. The alien woman helped too. She connected her small alien device to Jack's battery grid and used it to create a perimeter pulse, a warning if anything too close. Her movements were slower, but her mind was sharp. The girl stayed close to them both, helping where she could. Sometimes handing tools, sometimes holding lights. Mostly she just stayed within arm's reach. Jack didn't mind. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was learning what it meant to live. That night, after a simple meal, they all sat quietly by the fire. No alarms, no red lights in the trees. Only the soft crackle of burning wood, and the occasional owl outside. The woman looked at Jack and said, "You never asked our names." Jack blinked. "I figured you'd tell me when you were ready." She smiled faintly. "My name is Lyraya. My daughter's name is Taya." Jack repeated the names softly. "Lyraya, Taya, good names." Taya climbed onto the couch beside her. Mother then looked up at Jack. "Your name is Jack," she said, slowly but clearly. He chuckled. "That's right." Taya reached into her satchel and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. She walked over and handed it to him. Jack unwrapped it carefully. It was the old ID tag. The one with Lyraya and Taya's photo. But it had something new on it, a small piece of wood tied beside it, with a crude drawing carved into it. It was Jack. Taya looked up at him and said, "You're part of us now." Jack didn't speak for a moment. His throat tightened. Then he bent down and hugged her. Lyraya watched, her eyes glossy. She had seen so much death, betrayal, and fear in her lifetime. But now, in this broken little house on a quiet planet far from home, she saw something else. Family. Later that night, Jack stood on the porch. He stared up at the stars. Somewhere up there, those hunters were still out there, maybe watching, maybe regrouping. But for now, the sky was quiet. He felt a small tug at his sleeve. Taya had followed him outside. She pointed up. "That's my old star," she said. "Up there." Jack followed her finger. "It's far." Taya looked at him. "But I'm here now." Jack nodded. "And you're not alone anymore." She leaned against his side. They stood there in silence. Two shapes under the stars. Tomorrow, trouble might come again. But tonight, they were safe, together, under one roof, the end.